reason we were not able to cure narcissism is because we misconstrued it. And we were trying to treat something else.
So we mapped the problem ineffectively, and so you can't find a
solution.
solution.
Of course you didn't. You failed.
Problem. Yeah.
Of course you failed.
Yeah.
If you talk to the narcissist as an adult, you will fail. If you talk to the narcissist as though it's a normal person who is just an asshole, you will fail. It's not. It's a traumatized person. If
A traumatized child.
If you talk to the narcissist as though there's only one person there, and you talk only to one person, you will fail.
Yes.
Because there are two people there.
Yes.
You need to talk to both of them. And you need to get the false self to agree,
Yes.
to open the door for you to access the true self. Because the false self is protecting the true self.
Yes.
False self doesn't want the child to be hurt anymore.
Yes.
So first you need to negotiate with the false self and to ask the false self for permission to talk to the true self, exactly as we do in dissociative identity disorder.
And exactly as I find myself having to do with clients who just have CPTSR. I have to get through their bullshit, their defenses, and be like, hey, I usually at some point in coaching will say, may I now please help you? We'll fight for 15 minutes. We have a boxing match. And I go, listen, can I please get access to the machine under the bonnet so I can help? Okay. So there's this
similarity, of course.
But I think narcissism, nobody really wants to look at it, but it's kind of an intrinsic part of the human mode of being in the world. We must defend ourselves.
Listen, if you're abused by a narcissist, then what's happening? You have a sense of identity which is under attack, and you have an inner child which is under attack, and you actually what narcissist does to you as a victim is provoke and induce narcissism in you. That is the trauma. A narcissist transfers his trauma to you. In a way, it's very sad and pathetic because narcissist always believes that you can take on his pain. When I'm with a woman, I want her to take my pain away. I want to give her my pain. You know, for a split second, I want to be that 4-year-old child again.
Yes.
Not constantly terrified of being in agony, and so I'm telling my woman, can you be in pain for a while? You know, let me rest. Can I rest? Can you be in pain for a while? But of course, this is abuse.
Yeah.
Narcissistic abuse is a plea for help. It's the narcissist's plea for help. It's like someone who keeps saying, listen, I'm going to commit suicide, I'm going to commit suicide. At some point you will say, listen, this guy is abusive, you know, constantly threatens suicide, gives me a bad mood, depresses me, what the fuck? I don't want to be with this guy, you know. But it's a cry for help. Narcissists cry for help by abusing. It is their pathology that cries for help. They abuse in order not to experience pain. In a way, they're trying to transfer the pain. Even their grandiosity is geared for that. Narcissist goes to another person. Let's say a woman, just to make it more poignant. Narcissist goes to his woman and says, tell me I'm a genius. Tell me I'm great. Tell me, but what's underneath it? Listen, honey, I'm in pain. Can you assuage my pain? Can you solve my pain? Can you cure me?
I'm feeling anxious. I'm in some sort of emotional flashback.
Reduce my anxiety, please. Tell me I'm.
Yeah.
You know, so even grandiosity is a cry for help.
Yes.
All narcissism is a child. It's a traumatized child.
Yeah.
All of it is a cry for help. Even lack of empathy is a cry for help. This lack of empathy in a narcissist is a result of terror, of fear. Every single time a narcissist created an empathic bridge with another person, he was hurt. He was terrorized, he was terrified, he was punished. So narcissists learned that an empathic bridge, what we call the intersubjective agreement, narcissists learned to associate empathy with pain. Most people associate empathy with gratification, with narcissists associate empathy with, obviously they associate love with pain. Yes? So they withdraw, they don't want to.
Like a counter-dependent sort of
They
response.
simply don't want to empathize because it's, it's painful. They learn that empathy will be used against them. And so they're not empathic anymore. Of course, if you look at it from the outside and as an adult, I mean, if you say that this guy is an adult, look at this asshole, he has no empathy, he is grandiose, Yes, if these qualities are attributable to a totally intact adult, then it's a despicable, obnoxious creature. But if these properties are attributable, or behaviors are attributable to a traumatized, hurting, bleeding child, it's an entirely different picture.
Yes. Yeah.
Then what you need to do is nurture this child, help this child, not demonize or castigate or whatever.
We should be careful and say that obviously you're not advocating that is something that can be done inside of a romantic relationship. Because
no, we're talking about therapy.
We're talking about therapy here, absolutely.
Totally.
Codependents watching this who go, oh, I can love my husband better, or I can love my wife better.
No, it has to be done in a professional and structured way.
Yeah, and the professional who's helping needs to be a stranger, right? They need to be somebody that...
A stranger, of course, therapist. Yeah. Therapists, and I would even go further and say therapists who made this mental leap and mental transition and understands that narcissists are not adults, that they are in post-traumatic conditions, a codependent who will try to do the same thing, and she's not trained, with a narcissist will be rejected simply.
Yes.
If she tries to give him empathy, he will interpret it that she's giving him additional pain.
Yes.
If she tries to contest his grandiosity, or she exaggerates with, everything will be held against her.
Yes.
It's narcissists need to abuse. They need to abuse because it's the only way they can export the pain. Think about it like a country. A country has to export agricultural surplus. Narcissists have excess trauma and excess pain. They export it.
Yeah.
Simple. And they always will export it. Need to be a containing environment with a professional who knows what he's doing and has made this mental leap to affect any healing.
Because the boundaries of the professional would need to be extremely high and strong, and their perspective needs to be is it too pompous to say transcendent? Not really. You've got to transcend the normal boundaries of social interaction.
I try not to ideologize the whole thing. We know how to treat traumatized children, period.
Yes. Yeah.
We know. We have children after incest. We have children after natural disasters, after car accidents. We know we have children in domestic, being abused physically. We know how to treat them. We are very successful in treating such children.
Yeah.
That's all. That's the only mental transition you need to make. This guy who looks like he's 50 is not 50.
Yeah.
He's 9.
Yeah.
And he's traumatized, period. That second, you have all the tools you need to treat him. That's all. In my system, in cold therapy, I actually encourage, there are many counterintuitive things. For example, in my therapy, the therapist is hostile to the patient, to the narcissistic patient.
Okay.
Therapist, on purpose, recreates the traumatic environment, re-traumatizes the narcissistic patient, and I don't believe there is effective re-traumatization unless the abuser is recreated. There are many therapies that re-traumatize, but they do it like that. Listen, patient, I'm your friend. We have alliance. We have therapeutic alliance. You're in safe environment. You're in holding environment. I'm holding you. I'm containing you. Everything is okay. Now be traumatized. How can you be traumatized?
Yeah.
You cannot be traumatized.
Yeah.
You come to me in cold therapy. I'm telling you, listen, I don't like you. I even hate your guts. I'm going to abuse you. I'm going to traumatize you. I'm going to make your life hell. I'm going to humiliate you, reject you, everything. Now be traumatized. Of course you will be. I'm making it impossible for you not to be traumatized. And one of the ways I'm doing this, I'm encouraging transference in all therapeutic systems.
Right.
When the patient has transference to the therapist, it's discouraged. It's considered a bad artifact of therapy. For example, if the patient begins to treat the therapist like a father or a mother or a lover, it's discouraged.
Yeah.
Because it's considered
it's a boundary
contaminating
break.
the therapy, and boundary issue and so on. In my system, it's exactly opposite. At the beginning, the patient is encouraged to see me as the abusing figure. So if he was abused by his father, I would do everything in my power to be his father. If she was abused by her mother, I would be the mother. I would be that abusive figure. And then I would recreate the trauma and so on. They must go through the valley of hell. They must go through the valley of the dead to emerge. Once they emerge, narcissism becomes unnecessary. Because if they emerge from identical trauma, the trauma must be identical. That's the key.
And why do they need to be re-traumatized in a way that was identical to childhood?
Because they need to see that they went through an identical trauma and survived, and they're okay. If they go through non-identical trauma, their brain will tell them, listen, it's not the same, come on.
Yeah.
That trauma was much more horrible.
Yeah, yeah.
You know. But if they go through absolutely identical trauma, and this time, they're okay. They survive, they're alive, they're happy even. They say, wait a minute, why do I need narcissism? I mean,
plus they're experiencing it now as an adult instead of as a child.
Exactly,
So
I'm an adult.
they can see it for...
It's a realization, I'm an adult.
Yes.
That's one of the insights. Hey, wait a minute, I'm an adult. That's why it's not working. The trauma is not working. I'm an adult. I have all the power. I'm empowered.
Yeah.
I don't need narcissism.
Yes.
There is a principle in psychology called mental energy conservation. If there is something, defense mechanism, behavior, trait, whatever, that is not contributing to adaptation, it will vanish by itself. If you have something, you're doing something, or you have something, and it has no role anymore,
It drops off.
By itself, it withers,
Yeah.
withers and dies.
Yeah.
If I take you through the same trauma, and for a few psychotic minutes or a few psychotic days, you absolutely consider me your father, and you attack me, and there is a hell of a trauma, I mean, serious trauma. And then you emerge. Sun is shining, clouds parted, we're okay.
Yeah.
Everything is okay. And the trauma has been as identical as we can make it. You will see that your narcissism vanishes. I've seen it with my own eyes. Vanishes.
So the unconscious perceives the shift and goes, oh, that's no longer
I
a
don't need
necessary
this.
strategy. Right.
I don't need this. Because narcissism consumes a lot of energy. It's energy depleting. I mean, you need to maintain your image, and you need to fight for grandiosity.
You've got to be hyper-vigilant.
You're hyper-vigilant, and you need to analyze and synthesize, and it's a lot of energy. And the whatever it is that manages the mental economy says, why I need to waste so much energy on something that I absolutely don't need? I proved to myself I don't need it.
Yes.
Here, I went through the same trauma with my father, therapist, and I don't need it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So this is essentially. It's not that I'm curing narcissism. I'm rendering it redundant and obsolete
Right.
and unnecessary.
Yeah.
And then it goes away by itself. So this is the core. Of course, it's much more complicated. I invented many techniques. I'm giving now seminars to therapists, training therapists. So it's a hell of a lot more complicated. But one of the issues there is perception that narcissism is a dissociative identity problem. It has to do with dissociation.
Post-traumatic stress and dissociative identity formation, and that's how you're treating it.
And child.
And in the
And
child
psychology.
frame.
Yes.
Yeah.
And of course, all this has nothing to do with personality disorder.
Right.
It's a divorce from the current orthodoxy.
Yes.
Currently, it's seen as personality problem. Somehow the personality is misshapen. I say no, the personality is okay. Nothing to do. Perfectly okay. But grafted onto the personality, there's trauma, there's dissociation because of the trauma. There's, there are.
So would you have it removed from the DSM as a being described as a personality
Yes,
disorder?
I would move it definitely to post-traumatic condition.
And everything in the cluster B, do you think is similar?
No, but narcissism is.
Okay.
Narcissism is. Borderline, as you well know, is an entirely different story. Histrionic is very akin to psychopathy and narcissism.
Yeah.
These are many years ago, when it was just starting, I suggested that actually all of these and many other disorders are actually forms of disrupted narcissism that should all be reduced to narcissism. I said. Today there's a similar approach. It's called dimensional approach, which the DSM-5 committee was not brave enough to adopt, but partly adopted, which says that essentially there's one personality disorder with emphasis. So like there's one, and you have emphasis which is more like psychopathic, and emphasis is more like narcissistic, but it's one. And it's extremely close to what I suggested 20-something years ago. It's one.
Yeah.
One personality disorder. But I think narcissism, borderlines have a false self. And that's a critical distinguishing feature, because psychopaths don't. And histrionics don't. So narcissism and borderline, to some extent, because they have this false self, could be construed as dissociative disorders. Of course, borderline much more than narcissism.
Absolutely.
So,
it's misdiagnosed sometimes, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. So borderline much more.
Yeah.
But you see, even borderline, for example, there's close affinity between borderline and PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
CPTSD, close affinity.
Huge, yeah.
So, because it's a post-traumatic condition.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
These are all post-traumatic. They are utterly in the wrong place in the DSM. They should all be moved to post-trauma, to trauma.
Yes.
Trauma disorders.
Yeah.
They're utterly in the wrong place. And in this sense, if you want to simplify it even further, they are all PTSDs, variants of PTSD.
Yeah.
The ways we react to trauma, some of us react narcissistically, some of us become borderline, so, you know. And it gives hope, huge hope, because we know how to treat all this.
Yeah.
We know how to treat dissociation, children, trauma, and we have no clue what to do with personality disorders.
What about the problem of getting the NPD to the therapeutic environment?
It's, this is one of the myths for which I'm definitely partly responsible. When I just started out 22 years ago, I was very negative on myself. I shaped the whole thing like hopeless and so on. It is hopeless to a large extent, but with current treatment modalities. All people with mental health go to treatment when they have hit rock bottom. Even schizophrenic, paranoids, people with psychotic disorders. Even they go to therapy only when the voices tell them to kill their wife. I mean, you need to reach a breaking point to go to therapy.
Right.
To admit that something is substantially wrong with you. Everyone goes to therapy only then.
Yes.
Narcissists are no exception.
Yeah.
It's not true that only narcissists go to therapy when they hit rock bottom.
Right.
Everyone goes to therapy when they hit rock bottom.
Yes.
And not before, not a second before.
Yeah.
We have in clinical and therapeutic settings, psychotics come to us when they have been suffering for 10 years or 15 years with voices and hallucinations. But they came to us because the voice now is telling them to kill their children.
Right.
And they're terrified.
Okay.
That is their rock bottom.
Yeah.
The narcissist rock bottom is more materialistic. He lost all his money, his wife divorced him, and so on. So it's more like out in this world.
Yeah,
Material. So, but it's the only difference. But every disorder has a rock bottom. Bipolar will go to therapy after a manic phase where he spent all his money and bought a house with a swimming pool for which he cannot pay. I mean, they all have rock bottom. There's no exception.
So it's kind of a false problem. The
Yes.
idea that narcissists won't go to therapy. They'll go
No
the
one
same
will
way.
go to therapy
nobody,
before they hit rock
nobody
bottom.
goes, exactly.
Nobody goes to therapy before they hit rock bottom.
Okay.
They try everything else before. They talk to friends. First of all, therapy costs money, but forget money. I mean, therapy is admission it's an admission of failure. You have failed. You tried with yourself. You tried with friends, with family, with resources, online, offline. You failed. It's an admission that I'm helpless. I failed. It is reverting to an infantile state.
Yes.
It means I'm putting myself in your hands, Mr. Therapist.
Submission, isn't it?
Yes, it's not only submission. Submission will be a problem with the narcissist, but it's an infantile state, even for healthy people. It means I'm putting myself in your hands as an infant. You know. There is, of course, these paranoias about the therapist is entering your head, tinkering with your brain, which for the vast majority of people will be an improvement, if you ask me. But, shrink. So, and these are paranoias that are still prevalent in big parts of the population. Don't think that, big parts of the population are still leery of therapy.
People find out I'm a psychologist and they ask me if I'm reading their minds.
Yeah, this kind of thing.
And I say, yes, of course. You're disgusting. Stop thinking that. It's vile. In cold therapy is something that you've developed, and it's taken years of research to get there. And you're very well researched in psychology. And you're also researched in all these other fields as well. How do you get the time to do all this?
I'm far less impressed than you are.
Okay.
If you spend 10 hours a day doing nothing but reading and writing, I think you'll also contribute to a multitude of fields.
Do you do that because it feels good? Are you enjoying it every second? Or
I'm a failure at everything else. I'm a failure at, I have no social life. Women don't want me, reject me universally. I don't know to do anything. I don't drive. I don't play any kind of sports. I'm a failure. I'm a one-dimensional, like Herbert Marcuse said. I'm a one-dimensional man.
Right.
So I do what I know to do.
Yeah.
It's like asking a goldfish, why do you swim all the time? Don't you ever want to read a book? What's wrong with you? Goldfish swim. You know. I read and write. I don't know to do anything else. Sometimes I wish I did.
Yeah.
Of course, I am very sad that women reject me. But women reject me. I've tried my hand in the arts of life, and I failed miserably in absolutely each and every one of them. Making friends, doing business, dating, and having failed in everything except the intellectual realm, I stuck to what ostensibly I'm good at. I'm saying ostensibly because my childhood conditioned me, even there, not to go the beaten route, not to go in a beaten path. So consequently, I became a professor only now. I'm 57 years old. While, you know, with my accomplishments, at least in psychology, I should have been a professor long ago. Why? Because I hate institutions. I'm entitled. I think they should beg me, and all this mess, you know. So even there, even in the intellectual field. For example, you said it yourself. I have made some contributions to other fields. Who knows about it? No one does. So even in the intellectual field, I'm a failure. Even there, I did not succeed to kind of. Narcissism, I hit the jackpot on narcissism because I was at the right time in the right place. And because there was the internet and I put a website up. But you don't know how many times I wanted to abandon the field. It was Lydia who kept me in the field, by force, actually. Had I abandoned the field early on, who would have heard of me?